What's up, ladies and non-ladies? It is Serial, and today I have an extremely low-cost, all-affinity-friendly team that works on Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare with the same speeds at the same time. We're only going to have to swap out one champion to deal with Spirit. The rest of the teams can all use the same stuff. Now, this was all kind of started or inspired by a video made by Scratch, which was inspired by a Reddit post made by Spartan A. I'm going to go ahead and link to Scratch's video and Spartan A's Reddit post in the description of the video. We kind of ended up going a different route to where it's basically a different team, but it kind of started, well, it very much started with trying to emulate what they were doing and then adding the ability for the team to work on Spirit. Once I got it to work on Spirit, I had to make some changes, and I ended up liking the way that worked better, and then I just applied that to all four affinities, and then we end up with what we've got now, which is essentially a double Warcaster team. I'm using a Demytha instead of a Warcaster, and then to survive the stun, instead of an unkillable, we're going to use ally protection, which is way easier than I was expecting to keep someone alive. If you throw ally protection up, the stat requirements to stay alive through the stun are ridiculously low, and you're going to see that as a level 40 Frozen Banshee with mediocre gear, not leveled, does it quite well. So without further ado, let's fire this thing up and then you can see it in action. Now, there's a couple turns of setup required at the beginning. Very short setup. Basically, we need to skip 2 turns on Warcaster, having him auto attack, and then we need to wait on Toragi to do his ally protection until right before the stun, and then we need to hold Demytha's cleanse until right after the stun. The reason we're doing that is doesn't actually apply or isn't needed with a Frozen Banshee in here because she's not doing anything super important. But by holding that cleanse, we can then cleanse Frozen Banshee every time, and we're just going to get more DPS out of her. Originally, I was doing that kind of mandatory to keep someone who was running a 4-3 invincibility in rotation. I was using it for the Warcaster. So right here, you're going to see we're just about set up here. The clan boss is going to do his stun on his next turn. And then as soon as he does the stun, that's going to go on Banshee. Banshee's going to take almost no damage from it because of the ally protect. And I'll show you all the stats at the beginning, or at the end, sorry. My Banshee has like garbage stats. I'm going to end up leveling her to 5 and potentially 6 to squeeze more damage out of her. She dies on turn 48, the last stun before it would happen, so she's literally right on that borderline where a couple more defense would keep her alive. But I wanted to specifically record this with her 4-star to show you how ridiculously low the stats are for your stun tank before I actually leveled her up. So now at this point, we're just going to let this thing go. And every time we get to a stun, Toragi's going to have an ally protect on Frozen Banshee. Every time we get to an AoE, either a Warcaster or the Demytha is going to have an immunity up for the AoE. And then this is just going to be us stacking poisons for 50 turns. Now, if you notice, I've got a Vizier that's built, well, at least for my account, relatively well. This is on a, by the way, this is on a 90-day-old account. So we're 3-keying Ultra Nightmare on every affinity and very close to 2-keying it on Magic before 100 days. So just to give you an idea of the rune quality that this is able to work with. Now my Toragi and my Vizier have masteries, War Master and Giant Slayer, respectively. The Demytha, the Warcaster, and the Frozen Banshee aren't even 6-starred yet, so they obviously don't have that. They have almost nothing for masteries. I'm going to end up farming them probably on the Demytha and the Frozen Banshee. I'll end up using the Demytha for a long time in other teams, even if I end up grabbing like a Seeker or a Deacon. And the Frozen Banshee's pretty useful for 1v1ing the Dragon at the end of a Seer run. I'm probably not going to 6-star the Warcaster unless I have to. The Warcaster would actually produce way more damage by 6-starring it than the Demytha would because he attacks so much more often. But I'm super conservative with all my resources, and I don't want to 6-star a champion that I don't have to. So I'm basically going to edge these guys up to the point where I think ideally I'd like to 2-key all the affinities on Ultra Nightmare and then 1-key Nightmare, and I'll probably stop investing resources in them at that point. I'm going to go ahead and speed the clan boss fight up in the background and talk about the speed tuning while that thing goes, and we'll pull you back in for the end of the boss fight. So this is going to be our speed tune. This is going to work for Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare. The speeds are nice and low, super easily attainable. The Warcaster is the only one that takes like any amount of work to get up to snuff. My Warcaster is not 6-star, so he has way less base speed than a 6-star Warcaster. So if you do this with a Warcaster, make sure you manually change the base speed down, otherwise it'll mess things up. On the note of messing things up, these speeds are nice and slow, super easily attainable, but they are super, super precise. Extra perception set or an extra speed set very much can and will mess this up. So when you're building this team, do it in a calculator and do it exactly precisely. On that note of precision, you'll notice I've got a Valerie in my calculator. I'm using Valerie as a placeholder for Demytha. Valerie's base speed is different than Demytha's base speed, so if you follow suit and stick a Valerie in there, you need to manually go through and adjust the base speed. If you don't do it, I messed up and ran this at least once and failed due to the base speed being off there. The Warcaster seems to be able to go 245 to 249 fairly freely. The Demytha needs to be at 219 or 220, depending on the champions behind him or her. In this case, Doom Priest, I'm showing how it's set up for a spirit team, but you'd have a Frozen Banshee here just for more DPS on all the other affinities. They both need to be at 220, and that is the only swap you have to do. You put Doom Priest in to go for spirit, and you pull Doom Priest out and put Frozen Banshee in to go for damage on the other 3 affinities. The Toragi stays exactly the same and needs to be, near as I can tell, at exactly 218 speed. And the Vizier stays the same in all affinities and can go to, I forget if I can move him to 189 or 191, depending on the other guys, but it doesn't always work. Same thing on that base speed issue with that 190 slot. I was messing around with, I think, a Farakin, and a Farakin at 190 doesn't work. I had to bump it up to 191, and that's simply because of the base speeds there. So definitely put this together in a calculator. It is extremely finicky. Once you get it set in, it works like beautifully. I love it, but we're talking, fractions of a speed will jack up this turn order. On that note, if I could get Ninja into this team instead of Frozen Banshee, the damage would go like giantly through the roof. I don't need Frozen Banshee's dots. Toragi does amazing at doing the dots by himself, and then with Vizier extending them, it's more or less just overkill. But I messed around with a bunch, and I could not get Ninja into any of my 3 possible spots, either at 220 or 218 or 190, and not have him mess up the tune because of his A1 boost. If one of you could figure out how to get a Ninja into this team, the damage potential would skyrocket. Let's go check out the runes, and then I think we're about done with this bad boy. Alright, looks like we're back just in time to see the Frozen Banshee go down right there. She died to a hit of like 13,000 because she has less than 13,000 life at 4 star. It doesn't really affect the team as it is right now because we don't cycle back down to another stun. But I am going to go ahead and 5 star and probably 6 star her just because she's doing awesome work. I'd like to actually get real damage in here. Now you'll see the damage is fairly evenly split between the Frozen Banshee and the Taragi. Like 4 billion poisons are just wasted here because between the two of them and Vizier, we're constantly at a full bar. So when we pull Frozen Banshee out to put Doom Priest in, all that poison damage just shifts to Taragi on the in screen. Alright, let's go check out the runes on these things. Super replicatable. So my Vizier has full masteries and is built for damage. The Doom Priest is like 4 million times tankier than she needs to be. I built her before I realized how easy it was to keep people alive with the Ally Protect. The Warcaster is just pure speed. Unfortunately, there's no crit rate or damage on the Warcaster or the Demytha. I'd like to stick those in, but it's hard enough for me to get to speed on the runes that I've got available on this account. You'll see the the Frozen Banshee has like 1,700 defense and 13,000 hit points. And yeah, so I grabbed my 89-day reward the other day. This team got me the last thing I needed on Arbiter. I'm waiting to grab her for the Halloween fusion event. Alright guys, well thank you very much for watching. Hopefully that helps some of you guys get yourself a Ultra Nightmare team. I was insanely surprised how easy it is to keep the stun target alive with Ally Protect, and I don't think I've seen like anyone talk about that. It is so much easier going with Ally Protect versus like a Paragon or a Gnarlhorn, and then it just frees up a whole slot for DPS on every affinity, including Spirit. But on Spirit is where it's like super needed because now you're having to throw in Doom Priest or a Sepulcher to handle the slow. Which, by the way, a 4/3 Sepulcher works exactly perfectly in this team in place of a Doom Priest. You put her in the same spot as Doom Priest on the tune, and then you just delay her her block buffs so that it comes up right before the second AoE. You want the block buff to come up before the second AoE to block the slow, and then you want all the defense buffs to fall off before the stun so the defense buffs aren't screwing around with your stun targeting. And it works perfectly like that with a booked Sepulcher in place of Doom Priest. Alright guys, see you next time. Have a good one.